this funk. Thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I late in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and breathe and connect to myself and all that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress and bring me looking like when blessings drop in. And so I got myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah, let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
Let's go to walk on this sunset line. Let's go to walk on this cosmic laser. Let's go to walk on this earth-size line. Let's go to walk on this cosmic laser. I know you will come again. On this tonight, you will target mine again. Let's go to walk on this solstice line. Let's go to walk on this cosmic laser. I can see you walk on sunlight around this winter solstice.
Down below. And you say, well, I will put on.
Good evening, everybody. A little bit of change in the air. Got to mix it up, right? Can't do the same old thing all the time. And that's a classic example of what we do on Divided We Stand. You just never know what's going to come your way. You never know what somebody's going to say or do. But you'll be here when it happens. It's good to see everybody. Welcome to Divided We Stand. It is Saturday, the 23rd of October. We are still in Eastern Daylight Time. In about a month or so, or less, we're going to be on Eastern Standard Time. So it'll be, I guess, an hour later or something like that. It's 9:12. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. We really appreciate it. This is Divided We Stand on YouTube, and we are also on Facebook. We ask you to become a member. I've had a lot of messages for requests the last few days. But again, as Dave and I say, you don't get in unless you agreed to the rules. And we like it that way because it makes the group a lot better. And if you can't agree to the rules, then you don't get in. And that's that. Well, tonight I'd like to introduce my co-host, and that would be Mr. David Price.
Well, hello
I
there,
hope
bro.
the audio is correct
Out there
here.
in- what is that? What do we call it? Everyone out there in inner space, outer space? Where the hell are these people at? I mean, online, out of line? What kind of people are out there?
Well, we've got our peeps. I know that. I
That's
don't know
good,
what
man.
kind of people they are, but I guess they're a little bit like us because they're here.
Well, I'm assuming that, and so I want to jump right into it. Brian, did you have to put almost every known sexual fetish that is abnormal with you in the opening video? The one I want to focus on is the disco. There was a disco beat in there. Would you agree at one point?
There was a quasi-disco beat. Yeah. Well,
Quasi.
yes, because it keeps going over and over and over and over again.
Now, apparently, too, I mean, not, I've revealed before, and people aren't shocked, I guess, knowing you. You do like sweaty gladiator movies. I'm not saying there's, anything
I
wrong
had
with it.
one movie with Steve Reeves and put the background of our group on that video, and that's
Well,
it.
well, that's true. But remember when we were playing the band together and we used to use the videos? Every time we played, you had Steve Reeves dancing.
That would be untrue. It sounds funny, but I don't know if that's true.
Good job on the video, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good that you remember Steve Reeves. I mean, that's a
Oh
name
no! Well,
from-
oh yeah. Well,
from a
well. The thing
long
is, though,
ago.
I mean, and we don't want to. I mean, it is nice though that you did recognize. You do have a problem with other people's sex, and I think you're jealous of Stormy. I think you're jealous of Sarah. And today, for those of you who avidly read Divided We Stand Facebook post, later on the show, I'll be questioning Brian. I put 5 of the people he secretly admires most, who are all located at the time in Washington, D.C. So we'll be talking about them tonight. Let's see, Brian. What else? Well, wait a minute. We're kind of reversing roles, man. Not really. Not that you're optimistic. I'm getting more pessimistic.
Right.
But,
I mean, I think we're both in
well-
the same camp right now. I thought that perhaps I would be the more optimistic one, but then it kind of changed after the election. You kept warning me about, we've got a lot of things we've got to deal with. And you were right.
Well, I think, look, as human beings, I think we all hate to be surprised, right? I mean, a nice surprise is birthday. I'm talking about things that you think you should know. And
I thought you were
as
going to say like a nice surprise, like a stripper jumps out of a birthday cake surprise.
Well, no, that depends on who the stripper is and where you are. If it happens on your anniversary where all your family and friends are, it doesn't work very
Right.
well.
I guess not.
Or, as happened to me once, if it happens in a newspaper office while your son and mother are visiting, and your son is 7 years old, and you have to explain to him, well, that actually happened, but that's not a story for tonight.
Okay.
Don't ever work in a newspaper office. It changes you and perverts you, those kinds of things. Anyway, Brian, what I was going to say is, it's very hard in today's world. I still laugh at it, but my God, as you've pointed out before, I mean, we don't rehearse this thing, and honestly, I spend the week, picking up
And nor should we
things that I'd
rehearse
like
it
to
because
talk
it's just not the way we do
which is what I
business.
would do anyway. And then usually, to be honest with you, on Saturday, if I have enough time, which I did today, I go back and see, okay, what are the things that I don't want to say I was interested in, but the things maybe that I think are important that other people might not pick up on, or the things that everybody kind of knows is important but not real sure about and can talk about them. And this week, I don't know whether it's more. What's the most depressing movie you've ever seen, Brian? That just left you. Ugh.
Oh, absolutely. I think I can answer that in a second.
And what's that
Let
one,
me-
Brian?
I would say Ironweed.
Okay, yeah, that's a definitely depressing movie. So I'm not sure if we're going to be Ironweed tonight, depressing, or the movie that actually scared me more than any other thing I've ever seen. It was on the BBC, and I heard about it. This was before you could get it on cable, whatever. And it's a movie I don't highly recommend at all. I don't recommend anybody even see it. It's called Threads. And you remember back, in the 80s, we had that kind of nuclear scare again. Remember, kind
I
of.
think I saw Threads.
Well, the one, I can't remember. There was one done here in the United States, and it was your typical, movie, and I think it had Henry Fonda, or one of his actors in it, one of his last roles, and he plays the doctor. Everybody kind of lives happily ever after. Well, Threads isn't like that at all. In fact, people were so revolted by it that it never aired again until this year. They actually made a Blu-ray of it. So I'm not sure tonight if we're talking about Threads, which was the possibility of what could happen, and I think that's kind of, or Ironweed.
Well, Ironweed, if I may mention?
Oh yeah,
it really only takes, I think, place in one day in Albany, New York during the Depression, and it is depressing. It's extremely depressing. However, there is throughout we're talking about a thread. There's a thread of beauty throughout the entire thing, because all these people treat each other with respect, even though they're very poor and they've got issues, and that's the beauty of it. That there's something. Like you talk about Grace Under Pressure, there's just within this movie, it's something incredibly beautiful. However, it is depressing.
Right, and I think that highlights the two. Hopefully, just a little synopsis I gave of Threads and the one you just gave of Ironweed. Yeah, it's horrible conditions, but there's like a feeling of some hope or optimism in Ironweed. You're absolutely right. Okay, but with Threads, it's just worse, and it gets worse, and there's no end in sight. That's a good question, Anthony.
I don't know that it was. I have it
Brian
somewhere.
will remember more.
I don't think it's MGM.
We'll look it up at some point, Anthony. I'll get back to you.
You could find that on the internet, but I don't think it is.
I'll get back to you, Anthony.
But it was Jack Nicholson, so whoever he was working for at the time.
But what I was going to say about what I found, or what I was following this week, is, there's just not, there is humor, okay? Because there's still a Keystone Cop aspect of the GOP, right? Mm-hmm. There's still an how stupid can you sound aspect to the GOP. There's still Trump trying to outdo what Trump has done before aspect of the GOP. But what happens is, as I want to talk tonight, and I want to use my home state a little bit as an example of why I'm probably more concerned tonight about 2022 than I've been in a long time. But Brian, we always defer. Like I said, I will give all credit to you. This was your brainchild, your idea. So let's always, I always ask you, Brian, what's been going on in your head this week? Hopefully it'll be more optimistic than mine. But no, that's not true. We're just going to try to talk about what's real. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we can't even talk about what's real anymore. But go ahead, Brian.
I think it will all tie in with my feelings. And Bill Maher was on last night. I fell asleep. I couldn't watch. I watched it today, but I always watch New Rules the next day, which was obviously today. And Dave, he went through the spiel about, we're really close to a civil war. He said he was in Pittsburgh, and some cabbie from Bosnia had mentioned that, he went through the Bosnia-Herzegovina conflict and all that kind of thing. And he said that, I know this is essentially the same thing. I mean, you are so close to having this. This is the same type of feeling. And Bill Maher mentioned that, well, look, and we've talked about this, that the right-wingers, they have the guns. If there's ever going to be a civil war, we're the ones who are in trouble. And he said maybe the best thing for us to do is just learn to like each other and tone it down a notch, because we're all thinking like we wish these people dead. You and I have both said, we at this point don't care whether they, meaning the Trumpers, get COVID and die and all those kind of things. And I was mulling this over, and I thought, is and as much as I like New Rules for the most part, is he right? And I'm thinking that no, this is basically a moral red line that has to be drawn, and we are in trouble, and they do have the guns. The part that gets worse is I'm willing to take it beyond what Bill Maher's accusing us of having this hate speech. Because again, if we have the hate speech, they hate us even more, and it's true. And I've even said on the group page that the reason why they're after is not because they're for Trump, it's because they hate us so much. But I'm almost at the point now, Dave, where I'm thinking that, and I don't think Biden will do this, but I'm thinking that we're going to have to get Machiavellian. I think I mentioned to Ron, I said, he may have to, if this is going to lead in this direction, where they're going to steal the election and they're not giving in, then we're going to have to do some Stalin-esque type things. And that would mean doing things such as, okay, we're not going to have these interviews anymore with people. We're going to gulag you. Now, I know this sounds completely insane. Now, I'm going to defend myself because I want you to see, and this is nothing new to you, but it has to be shown because this just shows where they deflect any type of reason and try to go into their own world. Now, I'm going to try to put this again on the internet here correctly. Let me see if I can get this correctly. Internet. All right, let's go here. And I am going to go to loopback. Probably be muted for a little bit, but it's okay because we're just going to play. It's only a minute and a half long.
Only 9 House Republicans would join Democrats this week in voting to hold Bannon in contempt of Congress. There was even some drama on the House floor when Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene confronted 2 members of the January 6th committee, Liz Cheney and Jamie Raskin, waving her hands and calling the vote on Bannon a joke. Now, I went up to the Hill to ask Marjorie Taylor Greene about that moment, and here's what she told me. And what about that confrontation with Congresswoman Cheney? Why did that happen?
She's a traitor.
She's a traitor?
Yeah.
How can you say that?
Pretty easy.
We then caught up with Greene a second time, and I asked her why she would not hold Bannon in contempt. What was the rationale behind your vote?
The rationale behind my vote is I'm not self-absorbed like the rest of these jerks here in Congress. They're all ignoring inflation. People can hardly buy food. Gas
why
has
call
gone
them
up.
jerks if you
Gas
don't mind
is
it?
because they're self-absorbed. All they care about is Congress. They don't care about the American people that
There was
pay all
an
the
attack on-
taxes.
but-
All you want to talk about is your Trump derangement syndrome, and all you want to talk about is
Why
January
are you
6th where there's a
protecting
riot
Steve
here.
Bannon? Why protect Steve Bannon?
Because I care about American people.
The interview ended soon after when fellow Republican Congressman Pete Sessions of Texas walked into the middle of our conversation.
So, you doing okay? Let's
doing
get
great.
out of here.
Okay.
But not
Thank
Steve
you.
Bannon.
Hey, what about all the people that are rotting in jail? Why don't you worry about them?
All right, Dave. So I think we're back right now. Now, I know it sounds funny because look, she talks out of her ass. number one.
Brian, that's where you're
That's a
wrong.
danger point when
No,
they're
that's-
all
I think not you're wrong.
Right.
I think many of us are wrong. That on its face is so absurd. Almost every word she uttered. In an impartial world, judged by what Steve Bannon did and by what Liz Cheney did, and what, but we don't live in that world. We live in a very human world, and human beings can be marvelous people, and they can be horrors beyond our imagination. And what happens is we're in trouble, even if we had the best politicians, right? Why do I say that? The world is more complex and more complex every day. You could have spent the whole week just studying social media, and you come away, just completely. What the hell do we do? Another whistleblower comes forward at Facebook and said, everybody, almost to a person in that company who had any kind of power, knew that they weren't going to throw off the patriots if you're on the one side, or the insurrectionists if you're on the other, because it wouldn't be financially profitable to do that. Everyone in that company knew that if you get a youth Instagram, which they want to do, You watch what happens to body image with young people. So, you know, okay, I don't know about that. I'm going to move over here. You move to politics. We're not there. The one that worries me more than anything right now, and not because I underlooked it before, just I thought maybe we can fight this political battle and win it and then win the other, is the environment. So it doesn't really matter where you look, you know? So you say, I've heard people say, and I've done it too, well, I'm just going to over here in sports, right? And look at that. All right. So what do you got? You got arguably one of the most influential people in sports, John Gruden, using some of the foulest language about virtually every minority out there. And he's tied into there's come to Dan Snyder, who makes Ebenezer Scrooge look like a good owner in terms of what he's done. I mean, they were passing around. There was like Matt Gates, you know, boys' room. Here's our cheerleaders. They were shooting pictures of pass. I mean, oh my God. You know, or now the Houston Astros, you know, going to go to, well, 3 years ago they were convicted of cheating. I mean, it's not, you know, not speculation, but we've forgotten that. It's all about the World Series. So you can't do that. So, you know, where do you go? I don't know. With Miss Green, though, I'll only say two things. And Anthony, you've said a lot of smart, intelligent things over your lifetime, but you could just end your sentence with the first period. Trump supporters believe every single word anybody they believe is with them says. And it's to their own, it may be to their own detriment to do that. And I'm not talking about what they don't fear, you know, in terms of things, but I mean, they may be signing the death warrant of the Republican Party in certain ways, but even if they do, we may not have a country by the time that comes, right? So that's one thing. Whatever Green says, as delusional as we think it is, there are a lot of people that buy it. Secondly, not only are there a lot of people that buy it, Brian, there's a lot of people that applaud her for the ability to do that. People,
right? They absolutely.
People hate Congress. People hate the media, and now suddenly, I mean, only 50% of the people on any given day like the president, and you know it flips and flops around. So all of a sudden now, and nobody likes the Supreme Court either. So all these institutions that we've relied on to somehow arrive in this mess we call the United States, in this mess of government, which is dirty and messy and filthy, like pigs wallowing. We've always got, now they're all discounted. So, you know, I don't know now. So you got Marcia Taylor, people believing her, then people admiring her. And third, the new figures aren't out yet, but in the first third of this year, or I'm sorry, first quarter, I misspoke. The first quarter of this year, she was the largest fund gatherer, if you counted the money she took in, right, in contributions, and added it to the money she brought to others by speaking on their behalf. That, it's beyond even poster child. She has carved out a niche. And if it was just her, okay, but it's not. It's Boebert, it's Mo Brooks, it's Matt Gaetz, it's, until he disappeared, Josh Hawley.
Well, this is my point, Dave. I mean, look at these people who, look, it took, I don't know if Boebert took the GED 3 times before she, I don't know whatever it was. You know, what you have is, well, in a way, they're the perfect representatives of their constituents, because they are their constituents, and you just
I think that's important.
That would be Boebert.
Important. You remember when and I can see this to a certain extent, when GW was president, you know, I was running against some other people, and everybody said, yeah, but he's not okay, but he's a guy I'd like to have a beer with.
This is the question, though, that I think
here you go. I'm gonna go.
Mar was pressing that they hate us so much. It's
well, what I want to say, I think that's part. Veg is asking the question. Okay, first of all, often, obviously stupid people are so stupid they don't realize they're stupid. Okay, I mean that's just a fact.
Right.
Nobody wants to be stupid called stupid. All right. But obviously, they aren't. Now, you mentioned they hate us, and there's so many us's
They
in there.
really hate the us's.
Well, what I'm saying, there's so many
The
us's in the
liberal
Democratic
They
Party.
hate Democrats. How's
They
that?
hate liberals. Part of the
But
Democratic
within
Party.
there, you know, it's really the
They hate,
minorities they hate.
They hate minorities.
They hate us, you and
They hate
me,
up and-
because we back minorities.
They hate the Hollywood elite who make the movies that they flock to. They hate ministers who preach a Christian gospel, not the evangelical gospel. They hate, they hate, and above that, and this is where the stupid comes in, Veg. To me, why I think they honor stupid, why they believe it's stupid. It is a badge of disgrace. Okay, remember in the Scarlet Letter, Hester Prynne took the red letter and turned it around at the end of the book, and kind of a badge of honor almost. And you saw once again, the preacher was the bad guy, as is so often the case, or the false preacher. I'm not indicting preachers. There are great preachers out there, but there's a hell of a lot of bad ones too. And so it's now stupidity. Maybe they'll come up with the S and seriously put on their chest as a badge of honor. Because what they equate is this, Brian. They say, okay, the Democrats, yeah, they go to colleges and they go to Harvards and Yales and that kind of thing. But you know what they don't have? You can just see they don't have common sense. And that's the play. The play is to common sense. Now, in a few moments, I'm going to get into why I'm less optimistic this week than I was last week. But I will put one caveat in there. I'll let you know more Wednesday after the election here in Virginia.
And by the way, that's starting to look.
I want to get
tenuous.
into that tonight because that's not looking here. It's almost at a point now. I hesitate to say anything because politics can change so radically in such a short time. But this one doesn't matter what happens in New Jersey; it's a foregone conclusion. And anything would happen there, if the Republicans win the gubernatorial there, it's something just wow. Then the Earth is going to fly into the sun. And people felt it was that way here, but it's not now. And it points out all the flaws. Now, like I said, I'm not the smartest, never have been. Try to make myself smarter. But right now, as I look at America, and I'd love anybody to dispute this, just not because I'm challenging, you can't. I like when they dispute things. But I'd say right now, with certainty, the cities are Democratic, rural country areas are GOP, whatever that is. I mean, it doesn't matter what. So the battleground is the suburbs. And you hope that with the misogyny and patriarchy existing in the Republican Party, right, that the women there would see through it with their children. But here's the problem. Suddenly now, think about it. The GOP may be all that, but Marcia Taylor Greene, Marjorie, or Lauren Boebert, the governor of South Dakota, Nikki Haley, these women, right? They suddenly have their women out there doing that.
Joni Ernst of
Joni
Iowa,
Ernst,
horrible,
and,
just horrible.
I know, but
And Noemi or whatever,
that's-
Noemi, whatever in South Dakota.
yeah, that's your opinion and my opinion, and I think it's fact, but they don't think it's fact, and they think it is my opinion. They don't even look at what the facts are, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of undershoots that. But here's the scary thing. All right, so let's go to Virginia now.
All right, I'm going to put you on solo here so we can get this important stuff here.
I'm just going to do a quick summary here. Okay. Here's your history lesson in 2 minutes. Brian, if I run over, let me know. Virginia was crucial to the South. You can make an argument it was the most important Southern state. 7 presidents from there early on. The capital of the Confederacy was Richmond until they thought it would get threatened, and it moved south. It was just completely a Southern state, all the way up and through until the 20th century. And what happened in Virginia is, as Washington, D.C. continued to grow in terms of government and government jobs, and what a lot of people don't realize, I know I didn't until I got here. Do you realize, Brian, I would say for every government job, right? Every one government job, there are 3 private industry jobs that are created. Whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a printing company, whether it something that supplements that. So so where I live in Arlington and these other counties around here were enough and voted enough to turn the state first purple and then blue. Going into this election, this was acknowledged to be a blue state. Tonight, no matter what poll you look at, it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. Now, if either candidate emerges tremendously victorious, either Youngkin, or as I call him, Trumpkin, or the former Governor Terry McAuliffe, then we have a failing anyway, because that'll mean the polls were wrong. Now, I'm going to tell people tonight, I've preached it for a long time, please do not even look at, unless you're running, don't even look at, they mean absolutely nothing. They're less than nothing now. They're less than nothing because you don't know who they're commissioned by. Some of them have margins of error of 4%. Well, now think about that, Brian. I'll put you on the spot for a minute because you're my everyman. What does a margin of 4 points of error technically mean in terms of what could happen? Do you know?
Well, that could be 4 on either side. So
correct.
Technically, there could be an 8 swing.
And yet the poll would still maintain that it was correct. Right?
And it doesn't, right, because, almost anything's correct with an 8-point swing.
It's sort of like the weatherman, well, let's see, we could have rain tomorrow. It could be cloudy, maybe sunny. I don't know. It may start. Well,
that's funny, Veg.
You're hedging all your bets, right? You're hedging all your damn bets. And yet people put this. Now, another thing people should be aware of is that politicians use negative polls to themselves to their advantage. You say, how? Oh my God, we need more money. We need more money. We need to look at that poll. I get them every damn day. And just to be interesting, I usually, if there's race here, I get them from both sides just to see what's going on. And they're almost identical, just they're attacking. Oh, the polls, we need it. You might say, okay, because there's a Democratic governor now, Republicans said, we can take this, we're this close. And, the Democrats said, we got this now and we need your money. So that's part of it. So the polls are out. Now, here's what's most disconcerting to me about Virginia. It ties into my theory that elections, when there is a state that has rural, urban, and suburban people in it, why the suburban, I think, are kind of the ones that could break, right? Make or break, I guess is the term you would say, the election. All right, so we talked about some of the reasons I thought they might be, but there's a new issue, Brian, that's sweeping the country. It started absurd, but it's gaining concreteness, and that's critical race theory, called CRT. A lot of people wouldn't know about it, and Brian, I don't want to single you out, as people say, well, she liked Brian. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen Brian teach in the classroom. I observed him. I was trying to make him a better teacher. No, I didn't even need to go in there and make him a better teacher. I would actually route people into his classroom to see him teach, to see how good a teacher he is. But let me ask you something, Brian. Having said that, tell me what CRT is. Do you know?
Yes, I do know.
What is it?
Well, it's called, first of all, the title is Critical Race Theory. I know that.
Okay.
And I generally know what they're saying.
What do you know about it?
Let's just put it this way. My understanding about critical race theory is that all the things that happened in the past have had an influence on people of color right now. And that we have to take that into account,
okay,
especially in our teaching of the past, so that we can better understand, why things are happening. It's not an excuse, as far as I know, for certain behavior or the number of people going to prison. Or what it's saying is there are reasons, mainly because of white entitlement of the past, that it has created this situation, and we have to own up to it. Now, that's just my.
Let me ask you a question, Brian. Go way back to your childhood, high school. I assume you had U.S. history, right? I had it. Just about everybody, every
I
American
can't.
student.
I can't tell you that I listened very well or even
I'm
understood.
not saying
Okay.
that. I'm not.
But I did
that's-
have history, right?
well, it's almost impossible, I would say, to get out of any American high school without having at least 2 years. Some have 3, some have 4. I'm not talking about world or ancient history. Were you ever told directly or indirectly that slaves built the White House? I
Never.
wasn't.
I mean, I know it now, but no, I was never told.
No. That's it. We know it now. So certainly, does that make a difference? Yeah, I think it does. Right? I think it does. It's just so suddenly now. Well, wait a minute.
I was never taught. I mean, I knew that there was slavery when they would teach it, but they never like drilled in the things that were really important beyond the fact that there was slavery. The idea that we got a lot of labor for free so that our country could move from A to B very, very quickly, which would not have happened.
Now,
Okay.
let's look at what else came. Were you ever told that Americans gave smallpox blankets to Native American people as a form of genocide in
I
history?
was never taught that in history class. It was
I was
very
never taught-
sanitized.
Of course, it's sanitized. Sanitized by whom? By whites. Because again, let's not be naive. These cliches. Some of the reason they're be avoided is because they're overused. It doesn't mean they're not true. History is written by the winners.
And even when you read it, you cannot. I've said this before. You can't experience it. It's even difficult to respect what's happening because you can't feel it at all, especially
Well,
the way some of the people write.
Well, and we're not getting now. The other thing is, when this first came out, I looked at this and I said, this could be a little troubling. It actually came out to a New York Times article called the 1619 Project, right? I believe. Very influential kind of writing from that, saying that, America is who it is because African Americans were made who they were, right? And once you get beyond that and you start reading some real true historians, whether it's Howard Zinn, whether it's my former friend who wrote his last articles, James Lowen, they were really pointing it out, but it didn't make its way into the history books. Just like, one of the least effective teaching programs, and it's not the teachers, it's what you're allowed to teach, is sex education in America, right? Because nobody wants their kids to learn sex in the classroom. They wanted to learn it the way I learned it, in locker rooms,
Right.
and
Your
perverts.
older cousin or brother.
And I apologize to all the young ladies who I really didn't know what I was doing, but thought I might have over the years. And the important things it seems like we always shy away from. But I thought, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. Because actually, Brian, critical race theory as that is a theory that has never infiltrated high schools at all under that name. It's in colleges, just as, Brian, did you ever study literature under queer theory? I don't imagine you did you?
No.
And there's a school of thought, and it's very fascinating. I've taken a number of courses on it, and it drives it from that perspective, right? It makes some sense. Many writers were indeed misfits, both in terms of society, also in terms of, at that point, was what was considered sexual deviancy. But I feel, okay, this thing will just pass, and it doesn't. And it's been picked up by your friend and mine, Fox News, and the newscasters there, and it was just drilled home. And basically, it's now a code word for, critical race theory is a code word for, we're teaching that all white people are bad. And if you're white, you should feel bad because that's what you're being taught. Not true. Doesn't matter.
Not true.
Doesn't matter. So now tied into this, to why there's a few actual things that happened this week that made me very disturbed about Virginia. And I'm saying Virginia is really this time, I think, is a true microcosm of any possible blue-ish. This is North Carolina. This is Georgia. This is Pennsylvania. This is Michigan. This is Wisconsin, right? It's not North Dakota. It's not Alabama. It's not California or New York. But it's, Lord, it's not New Jersey. But it is a state where there are enough that if the suburban vote were to swing, right, could move from blue to red or red to blue.
And then they get entrenched, and then that's it.
Right. So what happens is, again, I had mentioned, I think some people in the show, so it was an interesting, I mean, I was way over my pay grade, but I really had fun doing it. I read some of the reviews, and they were pretty brutal of my tours. But anyway, I had this, I was doing these three, all the same one, protest tours for the Smithsonian in D.C. And I always go down a little early and check out. And I was walking, I was changing the route a little bit. So I'd come off Pennsylvania Avenue and was walking down, 9th Street to the National Mall. And as I got there, the Justice Department is on that corner, right, Bri? And I look up, and Judy was walking with me, and I said, holy bejesus, you talk about timing. There's a protest going on there. And I'm going to be bringing a crowd of people, by there. And man, you talk about the teachable moment, right? I mean, it just fell into my lap. So I said, I got to go over there. And she said, no. I said, why? She said, I'm not going to do anything, honey. I'm not going to argue with him. So I went over there, and they were Loudoun County parents. Now, Loudoun County is extraordinarily wealthy for the most part. It's majority white, but because of some housing stipulations, there are minorities in there. And so these parents are tremendously upset because they believe that critical race theory is being taught to kindergartners all the way up through high school seniors. And the message is that white people are bad. And it's not really that black people are good, right? The message is just that white people are bad. Right. So you've been to school board meetings. I would urge everybody in every community to go. I did it for how many years as a reporter, and then did it for how many years as a union rep. But they're very interesting places where all these things come clashing. So Loudoun parents, in general, unfortunately, it's an economic sign. The richer the parents, the more involved in the schools that they are. That's just a given. So these parents have been involved the whole time. So now suddenly they start showing up at board meetings. And here we are, what you would say is a prime supposed American county, judged by economic statistics only. And there were death threats, fights, teachers threatened. It just got really ugly fast. It made national news, as it should. So I'm with a group of people who are out there. They were protesting peacefully. They weren't doing anything. And of course, I wanted to engage in dialogue with them to find out what was wrong. And one woman who had actually served 8 years on the Fairfax board, but lived now in Loudoun and had children, she asked me very directly, because I didn't take sides. She said, don't you think that parents should be involved with their children's education? I said, absolutely. I said, but there has to be a balance. Because first of all, what you might want as a parent might not be what your next door neighbor wants or someone else, right? So you have to look at the largest of the group. And then secondly, not all the time is what you want for your child even best for your child in the long run. Those things should be done at home. If you want to school them, that way. That's why, I don't even have to be a big proponent of keeping religion out of the schools. The Constitution took care of that, although that's changing too. But they were very articulate, Brian. They were very nice. But as I'm riding by, 1 out of every 2 cars, Brian, this is Washington, D.C., bastion of Democrats. Now, but this is tourist day, right? 1 out of every 2 cars is beeping in support of this group. Okay? So I'm thinking, that's going to build. That's something you don't, as a parent, I was a parent of only 1 child, but I really didn't want anybody to fuck with my child, and I didn't feel that education ever fucked with it. But if it had, I would have gone in and said something. And these people, we talked earlier about, Marsha, they believe this is a reality. They just believe it because Fox News told them, because somebody told them. But here's where it gets really scary, Brian. as I'm standing there, and I'm not indicating who I am, but the group knows, a gentleman comes up, and I'm not going to make fun of his accent, but it was a heavy Southern accent. And he comes up to them. I want to tell you, you're some patriots, and you're not alone. I'm from South Carolina, and so is my friend here, and we're to help you and guide you, because I think you might have heard of us. We're the original Sons of Liberty. Now, do you know anything about the South Carolina Sons of Liberty?
Well, first of all, you said South Carolina, and then Sons of Liberty gets me the creeps, so you don't have to tell me.
Now, they are, certainly in keeping with the KKK, in keeping with the Oath Keepers, in keeping with the Proud Boys, in keeping with all those groups. So you've got these concerned parents, legit
Sons of Liberty, whenever they say something like liberty, it's usually they're going to take it away from
their
you.
liberty. Well, so I'm sitting there and I'm just listening, and taking it all in. Fine. And then they promised, they did let me down a little bit. I had to go back in. The tour wasn't scheduled yet for 45 minutes. They promised me they'd be there, but it wasn't a very long protest, I guess. I don't know if they were chased away. I don't know. And I gave them, I asked a couple of people, oh yeah, we'll be on your show. Yeah, okay, well, they haven't gotten back to me. But if it ended there, bad week for things. So I was up at this Crystal City Sports Pub. Okay, interesting enough, Brian, that's where I get my haircut. Has a barbershop in a sports pub, and best barber I've ever had. Anyway, so I'm up there, but he's pretty popular, so I had to wait a while. I'm sitting there, and I don't drink, but I said I could have a Coke, and I know the people there, and then gave me my Coke, and I'm sitting there at a little high table, listening to the people at the bar. And this is supposed to be a place where sports are discussed, right? And you expect that, drinks and sports can be pretty rowdy. Well, no, we got off on a political conversation with this group. And I just sat there, just eavesdropping away, not saying anything. And wow, there were no fists thrown, a lot of raised voices, but I guess I knew it, Brian. But that moment, coupled with the things that I saw with the Loudon group, coupled with what I read, coupled by the few moments I walk by TV when Judy's watching MSNBC at night, whether it's Chris Hayes or Rachel. Wow, I don't know, man. I'm going to say right tonight, there's no hope for that. There's no hope for reconciliation. None.
Right, and that's where I'm getting it. At some point,
oh yeah,
before it becomes a civil war.
CB, you get the award tonight, the journalism award. That's on my thing to talk about. So you get the Dave Price hand and clap tonight for being an avid reporter, because that's one of the things also that we need to follow. But let's finish this conversation, Brian, right now about this. So what I'm saying is, from every level, I don't see any common ground to agree on anything.
Well, Dave, I'm not worried about so much as that. It's the response from Democrats, and when I smell weakness, I'm usually right, and we can go into the whole spiel about, well, you got Manchin and you've got Sinema. Yeah, we've got that, but Michelle Obama said it wrong, completely wrong, when she said, when they go low, we go high. You can't.
Well, I'll tell you why not. Do you know why not?
You couldn't do that against Germany.
She'd be right if we were talking about politics as it used to be, right?
Right.
You might be able to do that. Right now, the Republican Party is the bullies.
Right.
They have limitations. They
are the ones with the guns.
Doesn't matter where you look. They're the ones that break the rules. They're the ones that do everything. The ones that don't have sanity, it keeps going on. Now, you can't tell them that because they just turn it around on you. And I think that's key. We always have to keep that in mind, Brian. They think of themselves as sane and us as insane. They think of themselves as the
right. Can we agree that they probably hate us? We've said this before, but we must really mean this. They hate us more than we hate them, and I don't think we really.
Here's what I was going to say. They hate us in more visceral ways and in more dangerous ways, right? Again, kind of, my I went through a lot of changes, as we all do, man. And I really thought naively prior to this that you could talk to people and reason with people. I didn't have to agree with you and all that. And so, my idea was always to be nice and then, get a couple points in, and you can't do
Days
that
are
anymore.
over. The days are
It's
over.
over. And they're not coming back. All right. They're
And
not
that's
coming back.
where we have to be honest with ourselves, where they are not. It's like Uncle Joe died. He's gone. He is not coming back. Or when you lose a good friend and they're gone, they're not coming back. They may seem there because they're still, only 3 days dead. You know what I mean? Like it's almost as if they're not quite completely dead. But no,
But I
they're
think-
dead.
Let me ask you something, Brian. Okay. Talking about the soldiers, right? And I'm the first one to say we shouldn't talk about politics as a game or as war. Well, I'm going to change that now. I'm not going to talk about it as politics. It's more serious. It is war now. So you're talking about the shock troops, the number troops, the people depending on your view, the insurgents or the patriots who either tour or take over the Capitol. Do you want them to be real smart? No, you don't. You want them to be unquestioning and following orders and not thinking, because once you start thinking on your own, if you thought on your own,
Yeah, I see
very
what you're
simple.
saying. Yes, I see
It
what
would be
you're saying.
very simple. If I thought on my own and I went up to that, and I was one of that group that went up to that White House, and I heard Donald Trump say these words, and I heard him, I'll be there with you, and I don't see him there, I'm done. Right? Man, a lot, they don't see, because they don't think it through. The other thing is, I've always felt, and I still do, that it is better if you're going to fight someone to get emotion out of it and just to get cold and calculating. Right? Well, they just get emotional, but on the violent side, I think, I come from a long line of me's. I mean, I've always been considered myself a semi-peacenik. I think that peace is better than war. I think that love is better than hate. But there comes a time when confronted by people who have no concept of peace or no concept of love or no concept of truth, where do you go? Well, some people would say, well, you take that burden to God. I'm not one of those. I think if there were a God of any type, like people believe, he would want us to kind of help ourselves too. I think I read that somewhere at one point. God helps them that helps themselves. You can't just sit back and say, God, take care of them. The Bible does say he smote some people, but that's, like I said, that's just great stories.
Yeah,
That
he
ain't
hasn't
real.
helped anybody at any time, anywhere.
But anyway.
At least not
So-
in any real sense.
So we look at that. So like I said, I'm tell everybody tonight, look at Virginia. I really don't have any idea how it will turn out. I do know that today Barack Obama was in Richmond with Terry McAuliffe, and I know that on Tuesday night they will be in my neighborhood. Joe Biden will be here with Terry, speaking whatever. I don't know how long he'll be here.
He's got to get out the African American vote. I mean, that's what.
Well, that's true.
and that may not
but-
happen in a
No, well,
non-presidential.
there's look, with any minority. Let's not just single out African Americans. With any minority, and that can be a ethnic minority, a gender minority, a sexuality minority, or just an issue minority, right? You need to feel that you're being directly impacted by it, right? Before you really move. And this, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. I think it's unfortunate. You have a billionaire white tightrope walker who's actually doing a pretty good job. Youngkin is doing a pretty good job between acknowledging Trump but keeping his distance, right? He's doing a pretty good job of that. Now, it's false on both ends. You either are Trump or you aren't, right?
Right.
But he's doing it. Now, I did forget to say one thing. I want to return to Loudoun County just for a moment. Today, a story broke. It's been going. I don't know how national it was. Brian, that there's violence in schools.
Yep.
Everywhere from tragic shootings on down to nose punches, right? And Loudoun, even with its wealth, is no different, has a few problems. But of course, the idea is you're not supposed to have them there. So basically, this is the story. and we've seen those. I've taught many of these kinds of kids. A young man, sexual offender, gets put out of school, gets put in another school, does it again, gets thrown out, ends up in a third school, and this one was in Loudoun County. And allegedly, and I say that because there hasn't been a trial yet, assaulted a young girl there on the school grounds. And there were reports that, and I'm sure you could see, you could say, yeah, I've seen that. There were reports that the school was trying to cover it up, the school board was trying to cover it up, etc. Now, most people say, oh, no, they wouldn't cover up something like that. Or they would say, they always covered up, right? Well, this is one of them sad times when they did. An email emerged, basically the story says, the superintendent there said they didn't know anything about it. And they hadn't talked to the school board about it until they talked about it a month ago. And that's not true. He sent an email and talked to him a month when the kid, right before the kid came, this could be a problem, and right as it happened. Well, the problem with emails is they surface, right? And they did. And of course, it's circulating now. And Youngkin today, great issue, suburban mothers and fathers. We've got this Loudoun County, and they did cover it up. So what did he do today to get some headlines down here? Called for the resignation of the superintendent and the entire school board. Now, I'm not even saying they shouldn't. They shouldn't, be fired. They shouldn't be dismissed. I'm not saying that. I don't know all the, I don't know, I don't know enough about the case. I'm not defending, but what I'm saying is it's not a political issue, right? And that's been made a political issue. So what we have now, it's always been somewhat, but now it's everywhere. Schools are a political issue. Vaccinations are a political issue. Churches are a political issue. Sports are a political issue. Television is a political issue. I was told this, and I'm sure you read it different places by good thinkers. It's, politics is everywhere. Yeah, but sometimes it's better not to know how much it's there. Like it was always part of it, I mean, and now it's and if that issue gets, and that will be the issue, it'll be Biden will be presumed as weak. This is a referendum on Biden, even though Joe's not voting and he's not running, but it'll be a referendum on Biden, and it will now be, I'm afraid, a referendum on schools. And the inference is, and I don't even know this, but the inference being made is, of course, the assailant was black and the victim was white. Now, we don't know that, all right? Because, of course, they're protected both by law and should be. But that's, people who do know, I'm sure, or even if they don't, they're spreading it that way. And then you've got these people from South Carolina, and it could be from anywhere. I have nothing against people from South Carolina, coming up to join those. But they're steeped in a long history of violence, and it doesn't take much to see this thing just going completely south, literally and figuratively, right? So we'll continue to look at Virginia. I just want to pick up real quick since it's all down here. Was it Veg or who did that? No, PJ. Somebody said about the Maryland. I forget who it was. And they were. So here's what happened, Brian. I don't know. This wouldn't make news other places, but it might. 3 counties. Interesting call. I happen to know their names. They're in front of me. I wouldn't know them. Allegheny, Garrett, and of course you would have to know it would be Washington, right? Named after George Washington counties in Maryland. If you think of the geography, there's parts of Maryland that are close, to Virginia, D.C., but there's also a part that's close to West Virginia in the Hangover, and they're close to that. They have articulated a plan to secede from the state of Maryland and join the state of West Virginia. Total number. Let me get the total number here involved of people. I do have that somewhere here. About 250,000 people in those 3 counties, which means Maryland would lose 4% of its population. And of course, those 3 counties are heavily white, not entirely, because Maryland was just found to be the most diverse state in the new census. I wasn't aware of that, until a new census came out. It is the most diverse state in the union, in terms of all categories. So it won't happen. You know, you live in South Jersey. I've lived in South. How many years have we heard, South Jersey secede from North Jersey, the shores?
Right.
It's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. But what's interesting is sometimes, I remember my mother, she got older, you start thinking what your mother told you, what your father told you, what you just laughed at and what was true. She always said this thing, and the older I get, the more I see it happen from time, not every time. She's always said one of her sayings, be careful what you wish for because it just might come true. It kind of came from, I wish you were dead, Mom, that kind of thing. And that is kind of lectures. But these people want to do that. Well, think about what would happen if that was granted. Maryland becomes no longer much of a swing state, right? They have a Republican governor now. But what's interesting is West Virginia doesn't get all the benefit because they voted 84%, no, a little bit higher, about 86% for Trump, right? In the election.
It was high, really high.
This count.
I think it was more like 76, but that's fine.
It was pretty high. But this group, even though you get these, you still have those Democrats unless they stay behind. But again, so what does that mean? It means more division, correct? I mean, and it's clearly politics again. It's clearly Trumpian politics, which is the new politics. I don't know what we're going to have. I'm going to, I want you to get a few words in edgewise. I may come back later. I got a couple things here. If we have time, I want to talk about Trump and his social media platform, Steve Bannon this week, and of course, the only male congressman that you secretly admire a lot is Matt Gaetz, because Matt's back in trouble again a little bit. But have you seen any of the comments?
They're all saying that they're in trouble, but they just don't get in trouble.
I saw Anthony put that up. Yeah, Austin. I mean, and yes, that's true. I mean, my roots. I have deep roots on my father's side in Texas.
Well, there are at least 2 or 3 times as many liberals in Texas as there are in New Jersey. So let's not forget. I mean, they could have 54% Republicans or 53, whatever it is. There are a hell of a lot of liberals in Texas too.
And that's kind of interesting because I was talking to a friend who worked with me at the museum, and we hadn't been together for a while, and so we went out to lunch, and we're just trying to catch up. And her son is down there. He's working for Magnolia Productions. Like that's become it's become like a center for technology, like a Silicon. What would that be? Silicon South, I guess. But they're also doing a lot of things with movies, and TV around technology. And he's with Magnolia, and he's just advancing. So she spent some time down there, and Austin. But that's an example. When you said, Brian, they're getting more liberals.
In fact, we don't even really know with Texas. There's still speculation about what happened with Beto O'Rourke. We don't know that it's even. Well, we know it's a red state in terms of what happened in the election, but we don't really know because the shenanigans, and we don't know.
And the other thing is that sometimes we take things for granted.
And they're going to, if anybody knows that, it's the Republicans, and that's why I think they're trying to stop that in Texas.
And then there's some things that just to me don't make sense.
And I'm sure they don't like Austin, except it's the most progressive city,
Well,
perhaps in America.
Dallas is a moneyed conservative city. I mean, they do have liberals. So there's an interesting, I've said before, looking at it, it's. Again, I thought Virginia was pretty solidly blue. I'm not so sure now. We'll see it 2022. So I said the next 3 I was looking at was in no particular order: North Carolina, Georgia, and Texas. With Florida, the undetermined will never know what Florida is. It all hinges on.
It'll be underwater sooner or later. That's for sure.
What kind of old people go there to die? I guess
And by the way, can I just add a little side note, Dave, for the rest of us? I was reading some kind of poll for what it is worth, that only 24% of Republicans believe that there is something called climate change and global warming. So
I think
it's a real problem.
I am surprised that number is that high. 24% of them.
But it's still not enough to get them to move.
Again, putting in our proviso, which I hope you agree with, polls, we take them with the proverbial, we don't know, right? Because 83% of them, no, it was either 81 or 83. Somebody can check me on that. It's either 81 or 83% of Republicans polled believe that the election was indeed stolen. So there's more. I find. I mean, I'm not saying.
Well, the only person they found, guilt. I mean, was it somebody in Texas had to pay a $25,000? I don't know, the lieutenant governor or whatever. They had to pay $25,000 because they proved that a Trumper voted twice. The only ones they found were Republican. Anyway.
I said, I asked. I mean, I've asked some people who are Republicans here who I know a little bit. I said, okay, fine, just show me. I said, I don't read everything. I don't know everything. But I said, of the half dozen maybe reported cases I've heard of voter fraud, all of them have been Republican.
All Republican.
Now,
They cheat.
it doesn't mean that means. I mean, they're so isolated. And I think what flies in the face of reality, given what could have been, given what the charges were, again, I feel safe in saying this was the most watched election for irregularities, presidential election in the history of presidential.
Right, and like you said, this is why I'm saying, Dave, we're going to have to do some really nasty things, and don't forget they're the ones with the guns.
I'm not, Brian. I'm not. Now, it's the same kind of thing that what I feel. I don't know. How do I? I've labeled myself, and I think this is true. I'm upper middle class, born, and it looks like I'll make it out that way, right? And whatever that means. But because I do have some Judy and I were talking about that. We haven't talked about it for a long time, since 2020 or the 2019 election. Do we leave the country? Now, I'm going to go back when I started this activism, right? 17 years old, Vietnam War. I had all the fallacious thinking of a 17-year-old.
But you wouldn't let them get away with it, Dave.
What?
Leaving the country. I mean, I'd rather just die and not let them get away with it.
Well, that's always been my thought. I mean, I've said that, but now.
I mean, there is. It used to be. I was having a quick, if you don't mind, a quick discussion with a Russian professor
my thing
today.
Is, I'm thinking of it again, but go ahead.
And this goes back to like Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, but with Alexander Pushkin, he thought that a Frenchman had been flirting with his beautiful wife, and he was a very handsome man. She was just an absolutely gorgeous woman, and duels even then were illegal in the 1700 in Russia. But he challenged him because in those days, honor meant a lot more than than life itself. I mean, it was everything to a man or a woman, I guess. But it just makes me think, like, if they would have a duel over that, and we're going to like leave the country because asshole. Has to try to steal everything from us, votes and our trees.
I'm not saying I'm going to. I'm going to say this is why I wonder what I will do. When I'm going to bring it back to 60s, early 70s. I knew that one of three things was going to happen for me in Vietnam. I was either going to go, right, at some point, if the war continued, or I was going to, if I got drafted, I should say, one of three things would happen. I'd either have to go, I would go to prison, or I would run to Canada or Sweden. And at that point in my life, I felt that I would probably have gone, if I'd faced that, gone to Canada. I did not, because I had a deferment, and then when the numbers were actually came up, mine was so low that there was no chance I was going to be drafted. And since then I said, stay and fight. I don't know. I mean, you have to look at the odds. I mean, I'm not saying what I would do. Now, quite honestly, is there a better country? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying there is.
Well, there are better countries, but if everybody goes to the better country, which is usually a small country, it's not going to fit, and then they're going to have.
Well, that's the other side, and also
you can't just move to Iceland. You know what I mean?
I would feel some guilt, and I don't even do guilt real well. You know that. My background. I said do guilt real well, because if I really, I guess, if sin were real, I'm a lost cause there. But the idea of, again, it will be the same though. I have that option because I am middle class and going somewhere. You know what I mean?
Right. Some people don't even have the option.
And it's the same with the environment. I mean, the poor people or the
they live next to the refinery.
Yeah, they're going to be the ones that are going to.
And their water tastes like Flint.
Yeah, same thing here. Now, again, sometimes I don't understand why they said that they're actually making Republican inroads with Mexicans. What?
I've seen
Huh?
that with a few students who have graduated. I've one
Huh?
that visited
No,
a
I
couple
mean,
days.
you see, yeah, that's what's that anecdotal, but yeah, what is that? I mean, what is a what? Okay, what is a woman who supports the Trumpian Republican Party? All right, that's somebody who hates more, is Tammy Wynette stand by your man?
That's what
You
it
know,
is. This is the Tammy Wynette's out there. That's exactly what it is.
a lot of
You
that.
just defined it.
But
Now,
I got
how
that.
do you get around that, Dave?
I can see Cubans, saying that the socialist communists took everything from my family. Well, you were taking everything from the people in Cuba, so I see why they're there. I see the Republicans were very smart, Brian, in capitalizing on with the Hondurans, the Latin
Here we have a
Americans.
Canadian who's, we're making him nervous.
Veg, you're absolutely right. If you could do something, no, I'm not even. That's not even a joke anymore. I was going to talk about the global warming making Canada more attractive. It's not. It's not doing anything except threatening. It's not an existential.
Again, because most of the Canadian population
No,
it's right
no,
next to the
but what
border. I mean, it's most Canadians don't live up north.
I can't.
They don't
I
live in the
can't.
Yukon.
I
They're
can't
like
even say.
us.
I mean, that's a big moment for me when I realized about a year ago, maybe a little bit earlier, but not. I still kind of referred to climate change as an existential may happen. Then I went to existential probably will, but we might avoid it. I'm not yet at certainty of the death, but I'm now. I think it's so real. I mean, yeah, and it may be. You always think, well, we got one more chance, right? Well, someday we're not going to have that chance. I don't know.
Vetch has, there is a good point here. They do have a few crazies up there.
Oh, they have them everywhere.
And we've been seeing,
that's the other thing too.
some
That's what I'm saying. When I'm talking
crazies
about
with
going
firearms up there every
somewhere,
once in a while. And it's
I mean, what goes with Germany? The fastest rising group in Germans are neo Nazis now. What the hell is that? Because they look at it as their glory days, just like our crazies here look at slavery and the Southern secession, and that was bullshit. I mean, it was all bullshit. That's what it was. It was it wasn't about states' rights. It was a right to make human beings
right, but yet they
slaves.
will still propagate that myth. That it's
Well,
about,
because it's a better myth, right?
we want to have our own currency, or something
Or,
like that.
or the one I liked. I heard this one the other day, actually at the bar. I need to go there more and just listen. I said, well, look, don't tell me about slavery. It says right in the Bible there was slaves. Who was the first slave owner? Well, it was Abraham. I just want to stop saying, sir, please, 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 please. Unless you're talking about Abraham Ribicoff, who was a real person, or Abraham Lincoln, who was a real person. But I mean, that's the kind of justifications we're getting. And again, I will just mention this. One of the problems that makes the Democratic Party greater is its diversity. One of the problems that makes it harder to fight and harder to stay together is its diversity, right? You know, the Mexicans will say, "Well, I'm not going to fight for the black," in that group. And I don't know, would President Bernie Sanders be better? I'm going to say no, simply because with Bernie, unless he could find a Congress that would back him, he couldn't get moderate Democrats. He certainly couldn't get the Republicans. And we haven't even touched upon the one that's coming down the pike, we know. So I'm just going to touch on it, something we have to keep in mind. Can you imagine what will happen in this country if, as projected, the Supreme Court takes the Texas case and upholds Texas's right to ban abortions and overturns Roe v. Wade? Can you imagine what this place will be like? That's not going to be a good place.
No, it won't be. And I think they will. I think
Well, the
those
indications
three
are,
assholes. Well, there's 6 assholes.
well, like I said, if I had to project today, it would be 5-4 to overturn Roe v. Wade, with Roberts not wanting to be his name associated with it, knowing that he could, it would still pass. I mean, I don't know where you're going to find. I don't know where you're going to find that fifth vote on the other side. I don't know. I don't know who's going to. It's not going to be Thomas. It's not going to be Scalia. So now you're left with the three new ones, all of whom have expressed feelings that either religious concerns or governmental concerns was overstepped in reproductive rights. And remember, Brian, the Supreme Court has an out. Do you know what their out is? If they uphold, they're overturning Roe v. Wade because Roe v. Wade controlled all the states. They can just say this is an issue. That's how the ruling overstepped its bounds. It should be a state decision, not a national decision. And that's that a lot of people, I mean, that's what will happen. That's what I don't even think they have a broad enough scope to make it illegal in all the states. What they can say is, though, it can't be legal as a national policy. It's up to states to choose. And then you're going to have probably 27, 23, 26, 24. We're going to be divided on that issue too. I mean, we are already, but, and that's down the road.
Sandy was mentioning. Hi, Sandy. By the way, good to see you.
Hey, Sandy.
She's mentioning this cyclone. I read about it about a week ago. These patterns of weather, where all of a sudden, California gets this just continual rain for 4 or 5 days. Not a good situation when you have obviously dry land. It's very hard, and it's probably going to have incredible flooding. And I don't know how that affects all of California. It's hard to say. When would San Diego still get it? I don't know. They say it never rains in San Diego either way.
Oh, in all of Southern California, right? The song's
right. But although, they need water, but do they need a bomb cyclone? I don't know. But in general, it's not so much that as it is that there's no respect for science, Well,
I'm going to be posting something.
That's the problem. There's no respect for evolution. I mean, look, with people involved with climate change, and I myself was involved with that kind of thing many years ago, and I'm still there.
Right.
But, I have a problem with so many different levels, and it all relates to the sciences. I mean...
Well, you look, there's three options you have, right, as a human being. You can say science rules, right? You can say God rules, or there are people who can put the two together, okay? You've seen it. I'm not saying it may be a mishmash, but basically, they're some of the deep thinkers. It's rare. Usually, most people say science or God. And since I know that if I jump up, I'm going to come down. That's gravity. That's science. I don't think God's involved in that. And I think there's to me, science now is the way it is. Now, what people have to understand about that is it changes, right? It changes. And we're seeing that more and more and more. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Remember, you weren't supposed to eat eggs, right? Now eggs are okay. Then coffee. Then it's not. Then
and aspirin was supposed to be good for
aspirin was supposed to be great for
you.
And
now we're finding out differently.
And what we don't know, though, think about this. And I've thought about this. I don't want to be the only one thinking about it. Climate change, which we're in, we're in
right.
it heavy. Not only changes nature, it changes humans too, because we're part of nature. And I don't mean our relationship to nature. I'm talking about our physiology and what we put in our bodies and all that kind of thing. So what if, I don't know, maybe aspirin 25 years ago, if we still had that environmental conditions, would be okay. I don't know. I don't know. So, I know this. I don't know right now a place in America that isn't troubled, right? It doesn't matter. California, okay, they're Democrat. They had the recall. It could have gone. But they're out there. But they're like,
these are frightening times. This is just
New York City. You've got economic inequality out the yin, right? Um,
Well, isn't this happening all around the world in general?
well, yeah,
You
and
know,
I always say that's important. It is. I mean, one of my feelings about
disparity of
Americans at every
income.
level is we obsess on America, and some of that though maybe was somewhat justified because we were the power. We're not right now. I mean,
Right, and China apparently has a hypersonic missile that they've
the
tested that
next
does work
the
as opposed to
power
ours.
grab right now is up for grabs, literally. And you don't need a full army right now. If you've got 12 or 14 good hackers in your employee, you could bring down just about any nation, right?
You'd bring down the nuclear power plants, you've got a
You
problem.
bring down everything. I mean, and people walk around and, you and I have talked about this for years. You're not and I don't mean to put you, I mean, I'm not putting you, you like what you like, and I'm a fan of science fiction. And I'm really a fan of two particular brands, apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic and dystopian. And all of a sudden, and I like good horror, which is, what should I say, thinking horror, not the Saws and not the Jasons and all that. There's been a real run on that, but they're so much reflective of what's going on. American Horror Story, I watched the last 4 episodes of that, and I'm going to talk about that at some time on the show because it was all political and it was really interesting.
Really? So because I watched the first year of that program, and it was
yeah.
just like a horror show. But when I was watching, what was it, The Handmaid's Tale? Now that's a real true
I'm sorry,
horror.
were you watching what?
The Handmaid's Tale, or whatever it was
Oh
called.
yeah, no. Well, that's true. Well, this one,
Handmaid's Tale.
not to give away a farm, but basically it was this, and it made a strong, funny case in satire. And you sit there and say, how you can say that can't be true? Well, I don't think it is, but it couldn't be. Basically, aliens have been controlling the planet since Eisenhower was here. It took all these things, Nixon. I mean, and in 4 episodes, it did a great job. It's the best thing I've seen of American Horror Story since I don't know, maybe the first season. I don't watch it all the time, but I did watch that. Another one that gets to the, even though it was horror, and this was maybe one of those things, best thinking horror series I've seen, is Midnight Mass on Netflix. But basically, yes, it's got the horror trips on, but basically it plays on religion and motive and mass hysteria, and very much plays into what we're seeing now in America, and that line between Handmaid's Tale as science fiction and reality, a lot thinner than it was when Margaret Atwood wrote the book. It's just something
Well, you know what? I think there's one book that I did read in high school, from what I remember, was The Crucible, and I think that at least was one where it started, a clear picture of.
Well, what Arthur Miller did with that, play, was he did very much what Star Trek and Twilight Zone. I mean, he didn't write in that vein. What he did was he was criticizing America as it was then by going back in the past rather than the future. If you go back and, Star Trek was talking about, race and all, in terms that got by the censors, right? In terms of, you can't say that. Basically, person for person, it's the idea of the McCarthyism and the witch hunts and the blacklist and, the Lavender Scare and, all that kind of stuff. And interesting theories about why that actually happened. And here's one that we some of the people in the museum, I just followed their research. They were looking at possibilities. One is, it really happened. That really did. The Salem witch trials really happened. It's not myth. It's not, if you go up and they have a little myth there now in Salem, but it was there. And so some of the possibilities were just crazed evangelical repressionism. One that I kind of liked, this one theory, was that the only way to advance for a woman was to take on her husband's property. And all these older women had their men, and these younger women didn't see anything, and they accused them, knowing that then maybe they could be with those men. There's another theory that there was, it was like a hallucinogenic plant that went on. There was one that Tituba, who really was Haitian, and who was there, that she had some influence in terms of not voodoo witchcraft, but in terms of spells, the idea of just teenage hysteria we don't know. But do you really see a difference, Brian, between the Salem witch trials is real historical fact, and claiming that patriots
Well,
took
this
over
this
and
is exactly what I was talking
toured
about
the
last
Capitol.
week. Everything that I was brought up, learning
I know.
about the Russians was, only partially true in terms of the government. And everything I learned about our government was wrong. It was, everything flipped. And you experienced it, specifically during the Vietnam era, Dave, because that's when you were in high
Right.
school. And you saw it, and then you questioned it. And, I slowly but surely kind of figured it out.
Well, see, and you got to change too. Like, you know, I don't care what people label me anymore. I mean, I'm too old to worry about that. What I'm really concerned about, Brian, too, and I haven't mentioned it so much, is, I've said, and it is true, I admire anarchists because they see the failings of government, right, and they're somewhat inherent, but they don't put anything in its place. So I can't,
Right.
I don't see them as being viable. I admired the shit out of the Occupy movement, but unfortunately, you have to have leaders or you go nowhere, right? The danger is, power corrupts, et cetera, et cetera. But right now, I know the Republicans, as they currently exist, are a threat to me, to my country, to my family, to my friends, to everything that I hold dear. I know that to be true. What I worry about is what if the Democrats, and you were kind of alluding to that tonight, I'm not even worried. What if they aren't powerful enough to do it?
Right.
I'm worried about will
And
they
that's
be
with the
all that much-
presidency. Now, you don't really have 50 senators, but you still have 48. You still have a big voice, and you put pressure on Sinema, and you put pressure on Manchin.
I don't think that's. Look, your buddy. I know you let no. I'm the one. Actually, believe it or not, like I said, I before this all broke out, I was at a couple of things where Manchin spoke, and I he seemed okay. I mean, he's a little conservative for my taste for a Democrat, but this certainly exposed what he really is. But I don't know if you've been following the story where Mother Jones reported. David Corn is he's probably one of the top political writers in America right
David
now.
Corn, I'm familiar with him, yeah.
Reported that Manchin was kind of threatening or saying he was going to go Republican. And he categorically denied it, called Corn a liar. Corn came out with so it's kind of funny because he could have told me that. We were together right after this story. We hadn't said irony put I think it was a funeral service for somebody, and they were there and they spoke.
The Republicans are courting him.
Yeah. Well, and he is a Republican, and
Yeah, I mean, it's right.
it's to his advantage to be in that state. And Sinema, who knows her thing. But I mean, think about that. Well, let's look at right now with the filibuster, which we saw just done again for and it's not what people don't. I mean, not people. It sounds so. They don't even filibuster, Brian. All they do is threaten the filibuster because that's what it is now, and it's
Right.
you don't have James Stewart up there.
Right. Nobody's
Mr. Smith goes to
make them
Washington,
fucking talk for 24 hours and see what
have
happens.
to pee and all that. That right now, with the Republican Party configured the way it's in the Senate, 21% of the American people can say no to the other 79%. Got to get rid of well, how do you do there's ways, but you got it's the same thing now.
Dave, I think it's just beyond. Look, come on. It's just
I know
nothing
but
is
let's put it
effectual
if
right
you don't
now.
take it-
You may have to do the opposite of what Michelle Obama said, and just
Well, I know, but that's easy. But yes, I agree. But how do you get rid of the Electoral College when it's in the Constitution? Well, you have to set it up the way the forefathers didn't ever envision using the filibuster this way. They put it in there. There were 13 states. They were, they didn't want 7-6 was, with the 13 states, right? It's not, and 6 are Southern, So it never envisioned. The other thing, I was talking to a couple of people this week, and I think this is true. So, Brian, I'm going to test it out on you and test it on our listeners who are very good. We were talking about it, and I think there was some truth to this. We kind of decided that in the beginning of America, if you were a dissident of any type, right, you just moved west. right? So at one time, Villanova, Ardmore, that was the West. It
Right.
really was, right? I mean, you know, and
And
then
for those people who aren't familiar with that, that's right outside of Philadelphia.
yeah, and then next move was, well, it gets too much civilization there. You don't like it. You move to Ohio, and from Ohio on to Nebraska, and eventually you ended up in California. Now there's nowhere to go, right? I mean, Alaska maybe, then Hawaii, but you know, so I think that's also what we're seeing now. Is there was always a place where you could go, right? If you didn't fit in.
You're gonna have to go up. That's the only way you're gonna get out of it.
No, well, now I mean, now you don't have that, and so it's like this, pressure, and then you have some places like I don't think that Jesus Christ, in the way people envision Jesus Christ, could win in Bridgeton, New Jersey, our city where we taught, my city for so many years now, could win as a Republican, right? It's just not going to happen. There's 12 Republican voters in the city of Bridgeton. And that's like, North Dakota's the opposite, and we have all these little things. So everybody feels I don't have a represent. I don't have a rep. Your Democrat became a Republican. Jeff Van Drew.
Right.
If you're a
Asshole.
liberal Democrat in West Virginia, you don't have a voice right now, right? Sinema, they've already the Democratic Party in Arizona has said they will primary her. They will if she doesn't come to represent what they believe.
Well, she's just something though. Just here's somebody who was the Green Party, and she was out for herself.
Well, can I say something about Miss Green there? Not Marcia Taylor, but hers. Have you seen, and they started releasing it, have you seen the amount of contributions that have come in from the
You were
Oil
mentioning that. I mean, I don't
It is,
even get.
it is like 9 of her biggest contributors now.
Well, like I said, Dave, those people like
And from a
Boebert
Green
and Green,
Party-
they are the perfect representatives because they represent people who are exactly like themselves, which means there are plenty of those Marcia Greens out there and some Boeberts too. I mean, it is what it is. Lenny Bruce,
Well, yeah.
and
And
said
I
it.
mean, and as much as I do admire AOC, I don't know if she has what word is the gravitas, hasn't been through it yet. She certainly has the brilliance. She certainly has the courage, right, to do
She
it.
does.
That we will give her. But again,
I love her. I think she's great.
well, or you take the whole squad, the young lady or the
I don't know about the whole squad, but I
no, they're all good. I mean, they speak their mind, they represent, but they're a minority within their own party, let alone, in America. And you've said it, and people know this, but I don't know if we have the time. Okay, the way you take back the country is you start with the school boards, and then the city governments, and then the county governments, and then the state governments, and da 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 da. But just like I don't know if we have the time with environmental, incremental, shall I say, environmentalism to change whatever the fate is going to be of it, we may not have the time politically.
Right, and you know what? And then maybe the good part about that, Dave, is that if we have to go, and it is climate change, and we go through some methane burst, and the temperature rises over 2 weeks, and that's it. Again, I don't want to go that way, but if I have to, and I can see these son of a bitches that are going with me.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but whatever happens now. I mean, if I can be healthy, I'll live to be 112.
Well, we're lucky. We've lived a very privileged
no,
life.
but
and-
I mean, we only have the one son, right? He's 48. He's lived a goodly portion of his life, but of course, the concern it would be for me is not an exclusion, but
But it is for everybody, though, because
I have a
even if it's not
14-year-old
you,
great-
it'll be somebody else
Yeah,
like you.
Well, no, it'll
you know?
always be. I understand that. I understand that. But I mean, that's the problem because it's not just, we don't fight. I don't think, well, I can't say, yeah, I can't say. I think the majority of liberals fight for others, not only themselves, where a lot of conservatives just fight for themselves or their kind. And so that others, I fight for a future of kids who I'm very optimistic will, if we can hold on and not destroy the world and not destroy the country for them, I think they're going to do far better than the previous three generations have done. I mean, I really discount the greatest generation. I mean, they're gone for all practical purposes, right? They did their work. Damn, they did their work. Okay. Baby boomers, those few of us hung around and hung in there. Too many went with the me generation when the 70s came in, and now, or whatever they were. And they weren't all hippies and, you know, SDS back then. They got the ink, if you will, but they weren't there. And now the next two generations, this guy said, you guys fucked up now, you know, and we're not going to do anything with it, the millennials and the Gen X. But this young generation coming right now, you know, I see them at the protests all the time representing. I see them, you know, representing the fight, you know, leading the fight, if you will, against guns, leading the fight of climate change, and not just here. You know, I think, you know, and not just Greta. I mean, Greta's great, just like AOC is a symbol of greatness of her generation. But there's a lot more Greta's right now, I think, than other places. And I think that's encouraging. But the bottom line is we have to hold on. And speaking of holding on, just a quick word about like I said, Matt Gaetz. Did you follow those developments at all this week?
I just know that he's getting closer and closer to perhaps getting in trouble.
Well,
but I'm saying until his ass is sitting in prison,
I
don't know.
Here's the two things that I think do not bode well for Mr. Gaetz, and bodes well for those of us who believe he needs justice just for being Matt Gaetz. One is, it was revealed this week that two Justice Department officials have been, and people think, oh, they just put them on. No, they've been working the case for 3 months. So they were called in, you know, relatively early. What would that be? You know, into the investigation, and they're both experts. One is an expert, is supposedly the Justice Department number one leader of child sex trafficking. Is one thing. Second thing is, as you research the laws a little bit, all you have to prove is that he had sex with somebody under 18, and indeed that some money or some thing changed hands. Now, the 17-year-old, who's no longer a 17-year-old, or anyone else, can come forward and say it was consensual. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. If you can get a jury to believe that yes, the sexual act happened, and yes, this money or this thing was changed, and the minimum sentence is 10 years. If Matt Gaetz gets convicted or pleads guilty, the minimum sentence is 10 years. This week it played out in the Senate. I don't know, in the House. The Attorney General Merrick Garland was there, and Gaetz, of course, is using his forum, and he claimed that this really good prosecutor was part of the Democratic regime, if you would. And of course, he said something. You know, he got a lot of play in the right wing media. He said, "Isn't having somebody who's worked for politics in charge of a political corruption of the other party, isn't that like having the, you know, fox guard the hen house or something?" Well, that sounds good, but it's not. Because
it's everything sounds good, but it's all bullshit.
Well, and so tonight, I saved the best for last. Trump, you did see where he's going to attempt what he said he would do all along. He's going to have the Trump social. Do you know what he named it?
The Truth or something.
Very, very good. The Truth Social. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, be astounded. We are now beyond 1984 territory. You staying awake, Brian, or you falling asleep?
I'm trying. I'm falling asleep. Yeah.
No, I know you're tired. Well, after we talk about Trump,
I get up at 5:30 every day, and I just can't.
But here's the thing, Brian, about that, just real quick, or other people listen about this. What's so bad about that? He's doing something I knew nothing about. Okay, I wouldn't have known this if you'd paid me $1 million, but I looked into it. He's funding this with a SPAC. So what the hell?
SPAC.
Is a SPAC. Well, basically, it's
something
an acronym.
Political Action Committee.
No, here's what it is, Brian. It's a way. What it does is it bypasses normal ways to grow, and it basically says, "Send me your money. We'll put it together. Then we'll go public, and you'll make your money back in an investment." But guess what? Mr. Trump has written into that. He gets to do what he wants with the money. So just say in theory, he gets $400 million from contributors, right? It folds, never goes public. He just takes his money and runs. So again,
They would
anybody out there
deserve
who's
it.
anybody who's putting money to that, but he's good, man. Anthony, you're absolutely right. They're not going to give up unless you take the 660 and find the 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 60 or 100 ringleaders and put them away for serious time. So far, the longest sentence is what, 18 months, and that would be less than a year with time with good behavior. Is that really going to deter them? Creates martyrs, in my estimation. So we'll see. So Brian, let's reverse roles for a minute. Is there anything you saw this week in the news, or not in your personal life, although yeah, you could do that too, that makes you at all optimistic about anything? Because I really, outside of the fact, like I say, young people, if we can make it there, and this was kind of not a week to sit there and cheer. Maybe after election day we can do a little bit. Not tonight.
Is there anything positive? I'll have to think for a few seconds. Anything positive?
Gary's suggesting awake and stay awake. I agree with him, but I always preferred methamphetamine myself. But
I I have to be honest with myself. There's nothing that I can see that's positive. Nothing.
I mean,
I say, well, here's one thing I will say.
okay.
Somebody said this back in '74 when I was in a freshman French class. Is that I hope the price of oil goes up to like $200 a barrel. I don't care. I mean, I'm so sick of oil. It's got to price itself out. And same thing with coal. That this country will finally move away from its dependency on these fossil fuels.
Will it? And I'm not trying to.
No, it won't. I mean, it won't. Not in my lifetime.
Who's getting blamed? Who's getting blamed right now for the oil price rise? The president, right? Okay.
Right.
Somewhat tangent. So we're going to throw him out and put a Republican in. That I'm not saying you keep a Democrat just for the sole reason, but we know that Trump or Trump light, whoever will be the next president, we can just kiss the environment goodbye. Then
Right. It's done.
we're not doing a hell of a
It's
job.
probably done already, but
But I'm just saying. So I mean, yeah, what you're saying. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and people say, well, but you know what?
I'll tell you what, Dave. If Garland is really weak, but
Or,
I would have been okay with climate change if it had gotten colder, because the guy said we could have dealt with that because even during the ice age people survived. But the heat it's going to make it uninhabitable.
But you know what, Brian? I guess this comes down to it, the way I'm looking at it, and there's just too many people who see too many ways to make money with everybody else being damned. Another thing that was a big, huge story in Washington this week, and it shouldn't be other than an object lesson for everybody else. The Metro, right? They knew for 3 years that the new cars that they were paying $1.2 million for had a defect. They didn't announce it. They didn't say anything about it. A week ago, they had an accident. Fortunately, everybody walked away from it. They now have pulled all the cars off, which means that today, to ride the DC Metro, it should be 15-minute wait. It was a 40-minute wait to get cars. Now, why didn't they do that? The two main reasons. Just put it off, because we don't be the ones that say we bought $1.2 million worth of trash times 150 or whatever they bought, or it'll hurt our profit margins. It'll hurt our profit margins. It'll hurt our profit margins. And security guard at BHS game and Juan told me he voted for Trump after I said he wasn't there. He was there to harm. Someday, Brian, we won't be speaking of Trump. And I'm going to say this. If you don't know what if anybody doesn't know what look up what Trump said on the death of Colin Powell 23 hours after he died. He proved then, he doesn't need to reprove it. The man has no human traits at all,
No.
what he said. And when he dies, I will make sure my comments don't show my
Well, I'm
side.
gonna have a big party the day he dies. Listen, Dave, before we go,
Yeah.
I want to tell everybody that Dave and I had come upon a decision, Dave, that we this problem about monetization, and so we are going to have a sponsor tonight.
And who is that sponsor, Brian, since you didn't tell me anything about it, you son of a buffer? It better be Stormy. Who's coming to D.C., everybody?
Okay, well, then I'm going to put on the sponsor here, Dave.
All right, let's see who it is. I'll see if I
Give
agree
me a
with
second here. I gotta
If I just throw my computer down, it means I don't, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Anybody want to bet? Vegas odds say Brian will be asleep 7 minutes.
All right, let's see here, folks. I gotta get the sponsor here, and wherever this damn thing is, it's if I can find it.
Open a Budweiser and pour yourself the most inviting glass of beer you've ever tasted.
Sure.
Cold, golden Budweiser with that good taste for good times. So go ahead. Live life every golden minute of it. Enjoy Budweiser. Every golden drop of it.
Budweiser beer is for folks who know where there's life. Where there's life.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Where there's life, there's Bud.
There you go. Sorry, folks.
Where's my
It's our
cut,
first
man? I
ad.
can't drink blood, so I need money. Or at least you're going to have the
I will probably have my video will be flagged for that. You know what I mean? So
maybe Budweiser will endorse us. I don't care.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
well,
Yeah, what could we do? Okay. Would you accept? I'm saying this is a long shot, but Stormy is coming to DC for 3 days for the Triple X Erotica show at the Dulles Airport's Convention Center. I'll definitely. Would you, if she'll sponsor the show? Could we at least have her sponsor the show?
if she wants to be on the show, hold it. We might have her on the show.
I know she's. It's not. There she is. What pretty eyes you have,
She's your
my
girl.
dear. Yeah, she is. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, go to hell in bed, will you?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Whoa! You got it awfully small
I'm
there,
fine.
dude.
I just picked
Listen,
it
I
up.
will say goodbye to everybody. I will leave you with some type of movie. Hold, let me see.
Something just called, and that was great. That's Brian.
Open a Budweiser and pour yourself the most inviting glass of beer you've ever tasted.
Sure.
Cold, golden.
Here she is. She is single and fun-loving. She is engaged. She is newly married. and not so newly married. She has no children. She has one child. She has many children. She even has grandchildren. She may be exclusively a homemaker. Or she may hold a part-time job. Or she works in an office full-time.
Things I watch.
She
Jesus.
enjoys her leisure time.
I'm getting a flag for sure on this.
She participates in community affairs. She's athletic. To a degree. She travels. And she spends money. In any case, our consumer is a real person, one of a large group of individuals that make up our consumer world.
Demand creates jobs, right? Oh well. Time to say goodbye. Good night. Or as they say in Russia, spoky noki.